Greetings, students. Today we're going to be talking about Indian magic, specifically Indian magic rituals. This is the main field of my research. I wrote my dissertation on this topic, and I've got a handful of other research projects that are going on about this topic, and a few things I've already written and had published. So this is something I know a lot about. And it's not like Greece, where I don't really know Greek and I kind of speculate. I've read widely and I know a fair amount about it, but I'm not a specialist in Greek culture. And I haven't been to Africa or to rural France, for that matter, like we're going to see elsewhere. When we get to modern esotericism and occultism, that's something I have a lot of experience with, and I feel that I'm comfortable in that space. But this is my main area of expertise. So let's get into it. Indian magic rituals. So today what I want to talk about is, first I want to sort of define Indian magic by going back and thinking about what is magic, how do we describe magic when we want to study it, and how do we study magic. Then I'm going to describe for you sort of the three constituent elements of Indian magic, and that is aggressive sorcery, fantastic feats, and enchanted items, and conjuring of mostly female deities. We'll get into all of that in just a minute. So finally, I will give you examples that I've translated from various tantras. None of these texts have ever been translated before I came to them. All right, now, tantras. What's a tantra? Here, the word tantra refers to a book. Really, in this sense, a book of spells, sort of like a grimoire. Tantras, as texts, however, are actually quite wide-ranging and include everything from rituals to meditation to narrative tales to philosophies. What we're not talking about is what I would call neo-tantra, which I talk about in other contexts, and that's sort of modern, Western, contemporary notions of sex magic. We'll get into that later. But suffice to say, none of what is called neo-tantra, and very little of what you encounter when people say the word tantra in the West, have anything to do with these Indic religions that make use of texts called tantras. Okay, so let's take this term apart. Indian magic has two parts, Indian and magic. So what do I mean by Indian? Well, India means South Asia, namely the South Asian subcontinent. The country of India was only established when it gained independence in 1947, and they gained independence because of the colonial encounter in which the British East India Company formed in the year 1600, the first multinational corporation, and it began its expeditions to Asia, specifically to what is now India, to establish businesses. And over time, those businesses became very powerful. And in 1874, the British Crown nationalized the British East India Company. And from that point, from 1874 to 1947, Britain ruled India in every sense of the term. India became a colony. Now, India, in fact, is not an indigenous term for the area. It's not a term that Indians, in fact, would use. So the word India is like kind of a loan word, and we find it as early as Hellenistic Greek. And the loan word is Sind, meaning river, or the Sindhu River. The term for India in India that would be very common is you just hear Bharat. Bharat. So Bharat is India. I continue using the term India, Indian, and Indic out of convenience. All right, so India from Sindhu or Sind goes as far back as Hellenistic Greece, and there's contact between the cultures of South Asia and the cultures of the West since the time of the ancient Greeks. So today, what do we consider South Asia, which is a better geographic name? Well, you have Pakistan, you have Nepal, you have India, you have Bhutan, you have Bangladesh, you have Sri Lanka. All of those together, and you can include Bhutan, I guess, all of those together create what we think of as South Asia today. Remember, these countries are relatively recent, but these cultures are very, very old. All right, so what about this idea of magic? Oh my, back to magic. Well, remember that magic comes from a plural term, magoi, in Greek. Now, you may remember the story of the birth of Jesus Christ in the Christian New Testament. There were three magi, the three wandering magi, who followed a star to get to Bethlehem, where Christ our Lord was born. So these magi or magoi, we would argue, are probably Persian. And the texts in the New Testament say that in the Christian New Testament say that they are from the East. So also we can find a Persian word called magus, which is like the tarot card, magus, and that is a straight up Persian term. So magic, magi, Persian encounter with Greek speakers, and the original New Testament Bible was written in Greek. We also have a term called goetia. Now, what am I doing with that term? Well, there's this term called goetia, which means a sorcerer or a wizard. Also from this goetia or goeti, it means something like to wail or to cry out. So remember that this goetia, they cry out, they wail, they yell. So there's that sense, like I said, wailing, crying, yelling out. Now, I would argue that this is really intriguing because I would guess these sorcerers were quite a noisy lot. They were crying out in their voces magicae. Remember those magical words, the magical voices, the magical languages that are often incantations that are non-semantic. They don't mean anything as a sentence declares meaning, but them being uttered do things. It's more ritual noise than a statement or a fact or even a ritual statement or liturgy. Now, these goetia have sort of an afterlife. And we're going to talk about this more when we get to the occultism section. In the 19th and 20th centuries, ceremonial magicians, especially folks that were in like the Golden Dawn, Eliphas Levi, Aleister Crowley, became very interested in a group called the Demons of Goetia. So what are these? These are deities or demons or daimons that can be called up for various magical reasons. Now, demons and angels and daimons, they're hard to really kind of differentiate from. When you really start looking at vast pantheons, it's hard to tell what's a demon and what's an angel. And there's a lot of statements in ceremonial magic about the reason you conjure so many demons isn't because you're worshiping demons, but it's because you have to be firmly rooted in mastery of all the realms above and below. So who are these goetia? Who are the demons of Goetia? And I remember the first time hearing about them, I was spending some time with some occultists in the 90s, and they were all very excited about how they needed to perform this ritual that they just called the invocation of the goetia. It was probably the Abramelin rite, but that's a whole other thing. And they would talk about how after you've solemnly conjured up all of these demons and had them bind oaths to you, so you have control over them at that point, then you would get these like majestic abilities. You had to have great knowledge. The lights would become brighter when you walk into a room. So when you really think about it, it sounds diabolical, but it's actually pretty angelic. The idea is you control these entities so you can affect magic in the world and you can make the world a lighter place. Anyway, so in the Goetia, the angels and demons are organized in sort of complicated flow charts that depict their rank. Demon kings on top, lesser demons to the below. Now, Goetic angels and demons were conjured using a language called Enochian, playing off this sort of lost book of the Hebrew Bible or the Christian Bible. Well, all right, both of them. The book of Enoch. Actually, I think that's the Hebrew Bible. So anyway, there were these characters named John Dee and Edward Kelly in the 16th century, in the 1500s. And John Dee was known for being a phenomenal astrologer, and Kelly was known for being a very good scryer, which means he could psychically understand things and predict things. These guys put together a language, the language of the angels. It's a purely synthetic language. They made it up. No one has ever spoken in Enochian. But Enochian languages the Enochian language is what's used to call up these entities. So in contemporary ceremonial magic, there's a grimoire. It was supposedly translated by Aleister Crowley, called The Lesser Key of Solomon. Yeah, that's Solomon, the guy with the temple. and I have the big temple in the Hebrew Bible. So words matter in all of this. And I wanted to mention to you that there's another context, that this howling, that this crying out, that these goetia, these howling sorcerers, might have some interesting nuances. I mean, I would argue that we have, just in these words I'm talking about, we have whole contexts that are preserved by and in words. And from looking at etymologies, we can learn something more about concepts. So those goetia, as I said, were called howlers. Well, in India, you have a very early ancient god named Rudra, whose name means howler or crier. Now, magic rituals often involve mantras, spoken spells, and prayers. Rudra is commonly invoked in a lot of these magic rituals that we're going to be looking at. Now, remember that a mantra can be repeated silently. It can be uttered and pronounced, like kind of muttered, or it can be like spoken out loud. They're not usually howled, but I think there's something to this. The mantrins, a mantrin is someone who is a master of mantra, probably going to be kind of a noisy dude. So there's something about magic and loud noises and dangerous things. Rudra becomes associated with Shiva later, and a thing that is said to be dangerous or loud or ambivalent is said to be Raudra, to be Rudra-like. That's probably enough Sanskrit for just right now. Now, the term magic was cast aside in the 20th century as being either an illegitimate thing not worthy of study or as a derogatory term. If you're looking at religion, you shouldn't be looking at magic. Now, the great J.Z. Smith, who taught at University of Chicago, and I had the chance to meet him a couple of times, he very much invented the field of religious studies. And in his deep background, he studied Coptic and early Christianity. Coptic would be the version of Greek that was spoken in Egypt. Smith came to argue in 2001, and I disagree with him here, but it's a very interesting quote. And sometimes when I have in-person courses, I'll distribute this quote and we'll read through it and talk about it. So I'll read the quote to you. I see little merit in continuing the use of the substantive term magic in second-order theoretical academic discourse. He's saying this category of magic. No, it's not good. We have better and more precise scholarly taxa, the things that make up a taxonomy, for each of the phenomena commonly denoted by magic, which, among other benefits, create more useful categories for comparison. That's a good point. When you get down to looking at what are the components of magic, what things go on in magic, like ritual, like invoking or evoking a deity, or chanting a mantra, voces magicae, these are kind of interesting to go side by side in different cultures. Because in fact, if I wanted to say study Indian magic, well, there is no exact word in Sanskrit or any Indian language that is magic or is an exact cognate. So how can I compare those things if they don't have that word and they have different concepts? So for any culture I am familiar with, and who's familiar with a lot of cultures, we can trade places between the corpus of materials conventionally labeled magical, or labeled as magic, and the corpora, these texts, whatever, texts and rituals designated by other generic terms, e.g. healing, divining, execrative, casting something away with no cognitive loss. So he's saying you don't need to use the word magic. Like, let's say if you're looking at cursing rituals, well, just look at cursing rituals and Greek discourse versus Indian discourse. You don't need to group them under magic. But I mean, I disagree in another way. The term magic still does a lot of work. See, the thing is, in the study of religion in the 19th and 20th century, it was really mired in this very anti-ritualist, very Protestant Christian understanding of religion. Religion was thought to be pious. It was thought to be introspective. It was thought to be transformative, otherworldly, the best of humanity. It united people and it caused individuals to evolve into better versions of themselves. I don't know. I don't think religion always makes us better versions of ourselves by any means. But later in the 20th century, the term magic that had been cast off for so many years came back. Like Smith says in 2001, no, we don't need to use this anymore. But even he, toward the end of his life, was using the term magic again. Why? Why did magic come back? Well, magic came back to scholarship when classicists like Christopher Farone, who's writing in the early 90s, and others really started looking at these pragmatic rituals and saying, these are really important. These don't look like our conception of religion, but they seem to have religious significance, definitely have cultural significance. So the Hellenistic studies scholars in places like the classics, and to some degree the archaeologists, but also in a huge degree the anthropologists, started rethinking magic and taking it seriously. I mean, I myself have tried to excise or exorcise the word magic from my own research, thinking that it was too broad, maybe that it wasn't specific enough. I proposed that magic was pragmatic ritual technologies. So rituals, always rituals, that cause pragmatic, this-worldly changes. But the term magic still does a lot of work. It has utility. It groups things together when you say magic that, I mean, to some degree it is, I know magic when I see it, which was the famous thing that a Supreme Court judge says, that I can't define art and pornography, but I know pornography when I see it. Interestingly, pornography, writing about women from the Greek. Anyway, so it has utility. And I would say these days, using the term magic doesn't make people afraid. They aren't afraid of magic. They don't consider magic to be illicit, illegal, or pathological in the way that it once was. When I say something is about magic, it brings excitement instead of fear or dismissal. And, you know, the numbers of students in my courses attest to that, and the people that come to my lectures. Magic's interesting. So I was thinking, though, that maybe that big excitement is because our culture in general does not immediately dismiss magic as pathological or as wrong or as anti-religion in a way that the general culture did even 50 years ago. The term magic might not be specific enough, but I'll tell you what, if you put 5 scholars in a room and have them start talking about magic, they're going to have really similar or really related topics. So what is Indian magic? So I use what I call a constitutive definition to define magic rituals. I look for these 3 things. If it's one of these 3 things, it's magic. If it's not one of these 3 things, it's something else. Will I ever add a 4th one? I don't know. It depends if I find a text that makes me really change my mind. All right, so here we're talking about magic rituals. Everything is about rituals. The magical as an adjective, such as miracles or special powers or phenomenal abilities, the use of an adjective for magic, magical, is something different. The word magic here in magic rituals is also an adjective, a word that nuances and describes a noun, but it's a compound term. The ritual needs the magic, and the magic needs the ritual. The ritual cannot be divorced from magic. Without ritual actions, then you're talking about something else, something outside this current conversation, such as India's delicious magic masala potato chips made by Lay's. I can house a bag of these things. They're like one of my favorite things in the world when I'm in Asia. And I can get them in a couple of Indian groceries here in Denver, which makes me pretty happy because I enjoy them. People look at them, though, if they don't know that it's an Indian spice. And you bite into them, and there's like this explosion of masala, which just means a spice, comes from the Sanskrit word misra, becomes masala, a spice mix. So it just like bangs, and that hits you with like cumin and turmeric and like this weird hint of tomato, and then black salt, kala namak, a little aswaetada, and methi. Like, oh, it's banging. So that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about chips that are described as being magic, or a spice blend that is described as being magic. That's a different usage of the term magic to describe something with preternatural power, or someone with an ability that's so great at basketball that they get the name Magic Johnson. Anyway, so rituals. And what are the rituals? There are 3 things in these pragmatic ritual technologies. There are the 6 results called ṣaṭkarman. Then there is the fantastic feats and enchanted items. So that's kautukakarman, which is fun to say, and indrajāla. And finally, conjuring, yakṣinīsādhana. Yakṣinīsādhana is conjuring and calling up predominantly female entities, and they give you powers if you worship them correctly. How did I come to these conclusions? Reading tantras. I just read a ton of these tantras about magic, and I was like, how do I define this thing? And I said, I can't pick one thing that unites all of these. But I know as I work across different rituals and I work across different texts and different religions associated with them, these three things keep coming up. So like I said, there's three now. If I find a fourth, a text will guide me there, but I haven't found one yet. I've been looking at this for over 10 years. Anyway, so these magic rituals are found in texts from all varieties of South Asian religion: Jainism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and even Islam. I don't have time to go into the details about all these religions, but it's kind of wild that Jains, who practice extreme asceticism, vegetarianism, and nonviolence, actually have rituals for how to kill people, which is just nuts. So what does that tell you? It tells you that this mode of magic appealed to Buddhists, to Jains, to Hindus. I even have a text I found called the Islami Tantra, which is a Muslim Tantra about these same types of magic rituals. So all these rituals done to kill and seduce and usurp someone's position demonstrate, like we heard in Greece, the sort of fraught agonistic culture that these texts come from. We see the tension. And magic here, again, shows us the cultures, the cultural tendencies, the material cultures, what was around, how people thought about things. Like when you look at the way that people relate to sort of animals in magic, and I'll get into this more later, is really interesting. Like, what did we learn about the Uyunks bird? One, we heard that there's a kinky, lascivious bird. Despite the ritual, that's nuts to just learn that that's was how they were thinking about this wacky little bird. Okay, the ṣaṭkarman. Ṣaṭkarman means 6 results. The word karman, you may have heard the word karma before. Karman means an action. Specifically, ritual actions are called karma or karman. The term karma means an action, so that, or it means a action, so that your actions that you do in this lifetime determine the actions you will do in the future. Your karma tendencies cross life, and the rituals you do cross your lives in the future. A lot of people think of karma as what you do comes back upon you, or what goes around comes around. But in fact, what's more intricate is that, and a better understanding of karma in this context, is that the actions that you do right now, you will tend to do the same acts in the future. So your habitual tendencies now will be your habitual tendencies later. So it's almost like there's a determinism that what you're doing now will kind of lay out what you're going to do forever after. You're just going to keep doing the stuff you do. So what are the 6 ritual results? Actually, let me say something else first. So karma in general is more than just what goes around comes around. It's not like the Wiccan rule of 3, which states that thou hast obeyed the law, but mark well, when thou receivest good, so equally art bound to return good threefold. So, and then he says, this is Gerald Gardner wrote this, is a very important founder of the Wiccan religion. For this is the joke in witchcraft. The witch knows, though the initiate does not, that she will get 3 times what she gives. So she does not strike hard. Now, I remember sitting with a number of occultists in the 90s, as I did, and a buddy of mine was talking about, he was a ceremonial magician, he was talking about doing some very aggressive rituals. And this, you know, charming little Wiccan girl who'd probably been a Wiccan for like a year, my buddy had been practicing ceremonial magic for about 15 years, says, no, you can't do that because what you do will come back upon you 3 times. And my buddy just turns to her and says, I'll tell you one thing, I am not ruled by the Wiccan reed. I got nothing holding me saying that 3 times it's all coming back. And it was just this interesting moment where one person had this like notion of balance in the universe. What you put out, you'll get back, and it'll be revisited upon you. And it's like a very kind of positive way of looking at things. He's like, nah, I'm going to do rituals to kill people. That's what I'm going to do. Why? Because they're bad. And when you get right down to it, there are bad people in the world, and maybe they do need rituals done against them to bind them or destroy them. Anyway, my point is, when thinking about karma, it's not just what goes around comes around. So what are these 6 rituals? I will read 8 of them for you, because whether 6, 8, or 88, they will all be called ṣaṭkarman. They will all be called 6 results. And the next lecture after this, I'm going to go into these in deep detail, because this is something I think about a lot. So shanti pushti, this means tranquilizing or increase. You may have heard the word shanti before, which means peace in many languages, but shanti means to tranquilize. And it can also be a euphemism for to kill. Then you have vashikarana, literally to make someone your slave, to subjugate someone. Stambana, mobilizing, to force something to not be able to move, to freeze something in place, to remove fire's ability to burn and water's ability to drown. Mohana, bewildering, making someone just crazed and agitated and whatnot. Often this can be described as fascinating, a word that goes way back. This is like this is really similar to our goge spells, the way someone is just so agitated by the arrows that's been put upon them. Vidveshana, creating dissent or mutiny. I like to explain this, that it's taking people who are formally intimate and making them hate one another. Uchatana, eradicating. So that's taking someone and forcing them away, keeping them away from you forever. Some spells say that they wander the world, a foreigner wherever they go, unable to stop wandering. It sort of sounds like in sort of African-American hoodoo, they call this the hot foot. You do a magic ritual to give someone a hot foot, and then they leave your presence, but they're always wandering around. It sets them to wander. Attracted. Akarshana is exactly the same as agoge. It draws someone forth. And finally, murder, marana. Now, these are aggressive rituals. They are done to harm people. I've argued they're like cookbooks to literally or figuratively screw your neighbor. The tantras themselves are like big books of recipes on these. All of these rituals and results, in one way or another, usurp the wealth, the family, or the social position of victims and targets. So let's look at 2 quick examples. We're going to get a bunch of these later. So mohana, bewildering, or kshobana is another word they'll use, so agitating. You take tulsi leaves. They should be dried up in the shade, mixed with vijaya seeds, mixed with physialis flexurosa, easier to say ashwagandha for me, tawny colored cow's milk, the milk from the kapila cow, banyan tree seeds, and abris prectorius, which is called rakti. All are measured in equal portions. Due to consuming this concoction, from the moment he rises in the morning, he bewilders all of mankind. This is a Hindu text from the Yudhisthira Tantra that I've translated. So it's not just Hindu. So here we've got a Jain Tantra from a text called the Bhairava Padmavati Kalpa, which is a great little Jain Tantra text. And it's interesting because Jains are so nonviolent, but all the ritual results are in there, including murder. So in one section, after a really complicated description of a yantra, which is sort of a magical diagram, yantra actually means a machine. So it's a machine that's a diagram that does something. Sometimes I think about that a little too hard. Okay, so they describe this really complicated magic diagram. Upon a slab of wood or rock, he should inscribe this full yantra using haritala, manashila, and so forth as ink. The results of the ritual are the immobilization of anger, kopa, kruta, motion. Someone can't move, their gait, someone is unable to move. Armies cannot move. And fire, when fire is immobilized, it means that it can't burn anymore. It can't affect anyone. I mean, also, I can't help but think this immobilization of anger kind of has some connection to our Greek notion in philia magic, that as anger is removed, so is sort of potency, machismo, and sexual desire. There's something there. All right, so moving right along. Fantastic feats and enchanted items. Kautukakarman and indrajāla, or indrajāla. Kautukakarman is just fun to say. So kautukakarman means fantastic or wonderful results or actions. Indrajāla refers to the net of Indra, like the net, like I throw a net over you. And in the net of Indra, who is an ancient hero god in India, his net is said to create and constitute the whole world. But the world itself is thought to be an illusion of his magic net. It's kind of cool. All right, so in these rituals, we have rituals that cannot be categorized under the other 6 results rubrics. And they're usually grouped together in texts. I figured out these 3 categories just from reading a lot of texts and seeing what rituals went in what places and were grouped together. So these are rituals to heal, to grant special abilities, sometimes divination, creating wondrous magical items like slippers that allow you to walk on the sky or in water, or goggles to see treasure under the ground and the like. Also, and I've always found this interesting, this is where you find resurrection spells, revivification spells called Sanjivani Vidya or Sanjivani, which means revivification, taking something dead and bringing it back to life. And we have a great picture here on the left, and I have magic boots over here, of what's called in the West the 7-league boots. Oh, it got cut off, but you can kind of see that the guy is stepping as if 7 leagues across water. It all comes together there. Okay. So how about some magic slippers to go across water as one good example? So we start off here and we have a mantra. Om, reverence to the delightful goddess, to the delightful god, to the great lord, to the great queen, to Indra, to Indrat, to Brahma, to Brahmet, to Indra and his female counterpart, to Brahma and his female counterpart. Reverence to Howler and Howlerette. What? Rudra. That's Rudra. It's all coming back. Okay, immobilize the water, immobilize the ocean, dry them up. Go, go, give me the magic slipper, Paduka. Give it. This is the spell. The spell is performed and perfected by 100,000 repetitions. So you'd say that in Sanskrit 100,000 times. Now, having made powder from the seeds of the Bignonia indica, or the sionica plant, and deposited that powder on a pair of slippers, the man can easily wander over the waters as if he were on land. Jesus, eat your heart out. There's a great book called Jesus Christ Magician by Morton Smith. I do highly recommend it. Here's another one. Fresh butter, gold, white mustard, onion, and fish oil. That sounds pretty good. Are made into a paste. Having completely plugged his ears with this paste, a man can wander across the waters like a crocodile. So he plugs up his ears, right? So water can't get in. All right. And from there, he can just comfortably live in the water. It won't drown him like a crocodile. So here you can see some resonances with like immobilization is in there, but it's not really an immobilizing spell. So what we see is this funny overlap where it has elements of the 6 magic acts, but it's doing something that the 6 magic acts don't do. All right, here's another one. It's a pill that affects invisibility. Oh, and what is this text from? These verses are from the Udisha Tantra, which is a Shaiva Tantra that's very diverse. There are a lot of different versions of it. I've translated a couple different versions of it. Okay, so here is a pill that affects invisibility. I grabbed this one because it's long and weird. A lot of these are small, but this one has a lot of coefficient of weirdness, and it's complicated. I think I probably spent a week trying to figure out these passages once upon a time. I'm a better Sanskritist now. So the practitioner should go to a kite bird's nest. Now, a kite is a giant sort of raptor that sort of soars very high in the sky in Indian culture. So you go to this bird's nest and make obligatory food offerings. Then, while mentally worshiping deities, he offers little bits of raw flesh to that bird until the bird lays eggs. Then he should deposit 3.5 measures of fluid mercury. Mercury is never far off. We are always close to alchemy. And if we had thrown alchemy into this class, that'd be a whole other unit. So anyway, he deposits 3.5 measures of fluid mercury into 2 eggs that are pierced. And my understanding of this was through the top and from the bottom, you would insert the mercury. The top and bottom of the egg are sealed after the following procedure, or after the preceding procedure, with beeswax and returned to the bird's nest. So the top of both eggs is pierced with 2 tubes. The middle of the egg is pierced with an iron needle using a heavy hand. Then a tube is placed in the hole. The fluid mercury is carefully injected into the middle of the egg using that second tube, pulling out from one end and putting in the other. Thinking about eggs. Having done what is described, he should perform obligatory worship via tribute offerings. When the egg bursts open on its own, so he shouldn't crack the egg himself, then he should carefully look over the top of the nest and don't get attacked by the bird. And he should grab those 2 pills that have because these little pills, these little goetikas, have emerged from the egg. So when he descends from the tree, he should give one to another man to swallow, not save it for himself. He gives one of them away. And the other pill he should place in his mouth. I don't think he actually swallows it. I wonder if he just puts it in his mouth. I've thought about that a bit. Now he can go and return up to 12 leagues in an instant. So he is able to fly across. Now, this isn't an invisibility spell. My goofy self. I got the wrong spell in here, but that's all right. This one's still interesting. So in this one, he's getting the magic slippers that allows him to go as if, like, imagine if, and you could take a whole mile or whole 7 miles in every step, some serious long striding. So he should perform the worship and the mantra repetition or japa with this mantra. Hrim Hum Pat, mistress of the kites. See, Chilachakeshri, the greatest goddess among the great. Give me the slipper. Give me the seat. Swaha. So that's the mantra that you say when you're doing all this business. All right. So our final ritual, and those were all Hindu rituals. They were Shaiva. They were from the Sudisha Tantra. Our final ritual is going to set of rituals is going to be from Buddhist text and then another Hindu text. So what's conjuring? So conjuring here, when I say yakṣinīsādhana, means the evocation of a deity, calling her forth, making her materialize in the space around you. Now, the word sadhana, the second part of yakṣinīsādhana, literally means a practice, a commitment, or a discipline. Sadhana could refer to also a ritual or a set of ritual practices. This could range from meditative discipline to a wide range of ritual actions. But what's a yakṣinī? Now, a yakṣinī is a female yaksha. Yakshas are very early, very ancient South Asian deities associated with trees and who would receive sacrifices, often blood sacrifices, at tree shrines. Presumably, such sacrifices are done with a pragmatic orientation, but generally, when I look at the iconography on these, they tend to have children around them. So I think they were connected to fertility and healthy childbirth. Now, yakṣinīs. Yakṣinīs are grouped together with a wide range of dangerous, wild, unruly, ambivalent spirit beings. Here are all female versions of them. So you have Rakṣinīs, a female Rakshasa, and a Rakshasa, it literally means protector, but that's almost like a euphemism. They will kill you. They will not protect you. So they're dangerous. They're wild. In Hindi, sometimes I've heard, and especially in Hindi English, people say, look at this Rakshas thing over here. You know, something that's like a Rakshasa, something that's just big and scary and wild. I remember riding a car with a friend of mine who was Indian and another pal of hers, and she turns to him and says, look at this Rakshas SUV over here. Rakshas, like this Rakshasa of this giant truck. There's no need to have this. Anyway, so you also have yoginis. Oh, I put yoginas. Yoginis. Yoginis are a yogin is a yogi, one who does yoga, but yoginis, which you would think would be female yoga practitioners, no, they're animal-headed witches who will devour you if you're not careful. But if you worship them right, they'll give you magic powers. We'll see that in a minute. We have snake-like beings of the underworld where they hold wisdom, waters, and jewels. These are called naginis. Naginis, like snaky gals. And then bhutanis. Bhuta means a being. That's sort of euphemistic when somebody say a bhut or a bhutha in Indic languages. That means a ghost. So you have this whole wild range of these crazy deities. And I am translating out of here from a text called the Buddhist Tantra, the text about the noisy ghost lord, or the ghost hooligan, I've described it as. Anyway, so what are these rituals? One goes to an isolated place, and he sort of calls up a yakṣinī, or another one of these related female entities, with mantra, so it's spoken spell of praise, and offering worship with incense and herbs and perfumes and sometimes blood sacrifice. Now, and this has been described to me by people that I know in Kathmandu, they describe this happening. They don't describe the deity arriving. Suddenly the wind shifts, or you smell perfume when there's no one around wearing perfume, or the operator who's doing the ritual hears the tinkling of ankle bells. I love that image behind him. He turns, and she has arrived. The female being shows up, and if she's pleased, she will grant all sorts of wonderful results. If she's not pleased, or if he approaches her incorrectly, or he is timid, then she might kill him. So you got to be careful. I mean, if she's pleased, she will grant you wealth. She will grant you power. You can climb on her back and ascend the heavens. But if she's not pleased, if you're timid, if you're not brave, she will devour you. There's a famous scholar named Wendy Doniger who said about these types of creatures, you can either be their darling or you will be their dinner. So there's some danger with these creatures. So let's look at a couple. So this is from a Buddhist text called the Buddhist Tantra. It later becomes a Hindu text. They take all the Buddhism out of it, which is really interesting. It's just now getting published. I did a critical edition of the Buddhist text. So it's exciting to see some new translations come to light. I don't think my critical edition is very good. Oh, well. Okay. So having gone to the temple of Sri Vajradhara, boom, Vajradhara. Who's Vajradhara? He who holds a Vajra. This is the name for like a Buddhist god or a tantric Buddhist entity. The name Vajradhara, he who holds the Vajra, actually, when you go back far enough, is related to shrines of proto-Hindu gods that are called Vajras and Vajradharas. So those sort of ambivalent wild gods get turned into names for Buddhas in Tantric Buddhism. This specific ritual is to bring forth Vimala Sundari, she who is variously, beautifully lovely. She is considered to be a Bhutani, or a ghost lord, or a demon princess, if you will. So, gone to the temple. Then, you should offer Karavira flowers and fumigate with bdellium incense. So to offer dupa, to offer fragrance and incense. He should repeat the mantra, I'm not giving you here right now, 8,000 times, and then it is perfected. At night, he should again repeat the mantra 1,000 times, and she will surely come. Once arrived, he gives her a bed of kusha grass, which is like a sacred grass, and should say, "You are welcome here. Become my wife." She will give him perfected divine alchemical substances, so mercurial substances that will bring superpowers and forever longevity. What will she also do? She will strike down all his enemies. Good deal. Having mounted her back, she carries him up even to heaven, and he will live for 100,000 years. Little ritual asks an awful lot. That's the cool thing about these magic rituals. It's like you do this little thing and it has this huge result. They have a small obligation in comparison to the grand results. So here's another one from the same text. Having gone to the banks of a river, the practitioner makes a ritual space using sandalwood water, so water with sandalwood in it. He should fumigate, so offering camphor, which is a resin that burns, it smells really lovely. It's often used in Hindu temples, and should also offer white and red flowers. White and red also stand for menstrual blood and semen. At night, he should come again and repeat the mantra 1,000 times, and she surely comes. Once she has arrived, he offers her sandal water and flowers, like he'd been offering before, and he says, "Be my sister." And if he does that, she will give him perfected alchemical substances. And she will also attract a woman, not a karshana, but a naitwa. So he'll lead a woman to him even if she is 1,000 yojanas away, even if she is 1,000, consider yojana 1,000 miles, that's fine, or 7 miles, even if she's 7,000 miles away, from a really long way. And then here's another one that is from the same tantra, and this is to this great goddess Katyayani, Mahakatyayani, who's an early Hindu prototype goddess who later gets associated with the goddess Durga. Now, you'll remember here, he goes to a temple of Vajradhara. That's either a Buddhist temple or a temple to a yaksha lord. Here, he goes to the banks of a river. Other places say you go to a lonely tree, a deserted temple, a river bank that's very isolated, an empty beach. So lonely, isolated places to do these things. The essence of this is you go out to a lonely place, you make offerings, and then they show up. And I would argue if there's any sort of primordial, ever-present religious experience, it's that one. Having gone to the banks of a river, the practitioner makes a ritual space using sandal water. He should fumigate with wait, I already read that one. He should approach a linga, which is a symbol associated with Shiva's penis. So it's a phallic symbol. And there's a whole bunch that goes into it. It's an aniconic form of the god Shiva. So when you look at this sort of like cone-looking thing, you see Shiva. Okay, the god Shiva, that is. He should approach a linga at night and perform 8,000 repetitions of a mantra. On the first night, he hears the sound of tinkling anklets. On the second night, a celestial wife arrives, shining brightly. On the third day, she speaks to him like a child. Hey, practitioner, what would you have me do for you? The practitioner should say, oh, goddess, look favorably upon me. Results are varied and stupendous. He will live to old age, all the while she gives him everything he requests. He climbs upon her back and she carries him across oceans, even to Mount Meru's peak. He may go to the house of Kubera, the god of wealth, and the opulent god gives him wealth and jewels. Conveying him to the northern bank of Jambudvipa, the giant mountain in the center of the universe, she grants him gorgeous, bejeweled women. The goddess grants all his desires. He shall live 100 years, and this is cool. And when he dies, he will be reborn into a vassal royal family, a Samanta Rajakula, a family of royalty. Now I can't go into Samantaraj right now. Okay, but then there's a Hindu one too. So I dug this out of a text called the Udameshwari, or the Udameshwara Tantra. So that's a Hindu text. The last one was a Buddhist text. Sura Sundari, the very good looking lady. Om Hri Agacha Agacha Sura Sundari Swaha. Now you got the mantra. I actually gave you the mantra there. Somebody can try this out. Tell me if it works. Having gone to a temple of Vajrapani. What? Vajrapani and Vajradhara, those are both Buddhist deities. And they're associated with early yakshas. So there's yaksha connections here. But this is a Hindu text, and it's telling you to go to a Buddhist temple. Things aren't as split as they appear. All right. So having gone to the temple of Vajrapani, the practitioner offers Badalium, it's hard to say, fumigations, and performs worship during the 3 temporal conjunctions. So like morning, noon, and night. He should perform 1,000 repetitions during the 3 temporal conjunctions for an entire month. Then at the end of the month, she will appear before his eyes. On the final day of the month, he offers oblation water with red and white, which is semen and menstrual blood, I'm quite sure. Then, which are considered sexual substances. They're not impure in any way. The menstrual blood is considered like a gloriously erotic, wonderful thing. It's in erotics, generally menstrual blood and the time of menses is considered the time for the greatest amorous delight between male and female lovers. Then, and this is so cool, and the Buddhist texts say the same type of phrase all over the place. Then, having arrived, she becomes either a mother, a sister, or a wife, and she will perform actions appropriate to that role. How so? I wonder. If she is a mother, then she gives him perfected alchemical substances. Again, powers and longevity. If she's a sister, then she will give him legendary, priceless, fine clothing. If she's a wife, then she will richly bestow upon him universal sovereignty. So, magical rule. He will rule over the earth. However, should the bed he prepares for her when she comes as a wife is occupied by another person, she will become desirous of lovemaking with him, or murderous. So there's some risks on this one. Okay. Oh, sorry. That's the end of it. What are the takeaways? And here's a scene from the River Ganges. Go to Banaras. It's just amazing. I love it there. That city's, I've spent a lot of time there. The term magic is old, and the concept has shifted quite a bit in the academy. It's been a thing that was called primitive religion, then it's been called not religion. I mean, look at all the different ways magic was defined at the beginning of the class. Magic in India has these three parts: aggressive sorcery, fantastic feats, and enchanted objects, and conjuring. All of these are accompanied by rituals. They don't happen. The results don't happen without rituals. And Indian magic is almost entirely always aggressive. I was at a gathering of esotericists one time, and a charming guy who I quite like came to me and said, I really want to learn about Indian magic. And I said, do you? I started telling him about it, and his eyes just got big. He said, no, I don't want to learn about that. That sounds horrible. And I'm sure he was thinking to himself, oh no, the rule of three will come back upon me, or something like that. But sometimes when people ask me, like, you know, all these rituals, do you do them? Do they work? And I'm like, well, one, I don't do them. And two, if they worked, why would I want to? Because they do horrible things to people. The one ethical pronouncement that these texts make is that you should use these rituals for one specific reason. That's to usurp the position of another, to take someone's money, someone's wealth, someone's family. These are rooted in jealousy, and they are hostile in pretty much every way. Sleep well.